Okay, here are a few theories pertaining to the initiation of migration. The new classical economics theory at the micro level focuses on differential in wages and employment conditions and the migration cost between the origin and destination countries. In other words, at the micro or individual levels, prospective migrants, they weigh in the wages in their places of origin and the places in their intended destination areas. If they perceive that wages are higher in the destination areas and the cost of migration, like transportation costs, maybe food and lodging costs, and other relevant costs, are less than the benefits associated with migration, they are going to make a decision to migrate. If they perceive that there are more employment opportunities and it costs less to migrate when compared to the benefits, they are going to make a decision to migrate. And at the macro or place level, when we talk about macro level, we are focusing on differences in different locations. These locations can be cities, towns, states, counties, or even countries. So the new classical economics theory at the macro level focuses on the differentials in supply and demand of labor between two countries. If there are more supply in a given location and people in that location cannot get jobs, they are going to migrate to another location where there's a demand for their skills, expertise, knowledge, experience, and so on. And at the macro level, the new classical economics theory also focuses on the ratio of labor versus capital when determining market wage. So when there are more labor when compared to capital, wages are going to be low in that location. When there is an excess in capital and a shortage of labor in the location, wages are going to be high. So people in places where there are excessive labor supply are going to migrate to places where there are more capital but facing labor shortages. Eventually, things are going to balance itself out in terms of labor and capital, as well as the supply and demand of labor. So because of that, migration can help to attain equilibrium in both the places of origin and the destination areas. And according to the neoclassical economics theory, migration is entirely an individual decision. People migrate to maximize their income. If they perceive wages in other areas are higher than where they came from. However, we know, like many other theories, the neoclassical economics theory is not perfect. And because of that, a few other researchers, they revised this theory and they called it the new economics of migration theory or the new economics theory of migration. Because they perceive that sometimes family as a whole or people living in the same household, they can make decisions as a group, and this includes decision pertaining to migration. And in some less developed or third world countries, there's an absence of crop insurance or future markets, and there's also an absence of unemployment insurance and other capital markets. And sometimes people living in these less developed or third world countries, they face all kinds of capital constraints. Maybe they work on their own family enterprises, whether it is agriculture, farming, mining, fishing, and so on and so forth. Maybe they don't really document their profits, or they have a different perceptions about income and wages among their own family members. And because of that, if they want to expand their farming, agricultural enterprises, or their mining and fishing enterprises, they may face a lot of difficulty or challenges trying to obtain a loan from a bank. In other words, they face capital constraints. And because of that, if they don't have any collateral that's acceptable by the banks to get a loan to expand on their family enterprises, they are going to make a decision on which family members they should send abroad to work as labor migrants. Hopefully, these family members, if they can get a job abroad, maybe they are going to send back their incomes or part of their incomes and other remittance. This is how family members as a whole overcome capital constraint by deciding who should migrate abroad. And hopefully that member is going to send some of their income back to expand their family enterprises locally. And sometimes when they plant certain things, they are not always going to get what they planted. Their harvest may not be good, or their harvest may not be what they would expect. And in other developed first world countries, there is such thing as crop insurance, but crop insurance may not exist in many less developed or third world countries. And sometimes maybe crops may be infested by insects or other diseases. People may incur a loss to their crops, and they are not protected by crop insurance because it is either non-existent or underdeveloped in these countries. And because of that, they may send one or more members of their family abroad as migrant laborers as a risk diversification strategy to counter for potential crop losses. And sometimes the prices of their crops can fluctuate over time. But unlike the first world countries, or unlike other developed countries, there may not be any future markets to protect against the volatile crop prices. And because of that, for the same reason, they may send one or more members of their family abroad as labor migrants as a risk diversification strategy. And if times are bad due to natural disasters or crop losses or something else, one or more of the family members may lose their jobs, but they are not compensated in any way in most instances because unemployment insurance may be non-existent or very underdeveloped in many third world countries. And because of that, for the same reasons, they may decide to send one or more family members abroad, just in case somebody back home is unemployed. Due to whatever reason, they still have a source of income. And we've been through this before. There may be a lack of capital markets, or the capital markets, the banking and financial institutions are non-existent or somewhat underdeveloped in some countries. And because of that, they may not be able to get a loan to expand their family enterprises. Or maybe what they have as collateral may not be acceptable to the banks. Or maybe they simply lack a good credit history in some countries. And because of that, they may decide to send one or more members of their family abroad to overcome capital constraints. And because of that, the new economics theory of migration attempts to revise the neoclassical economics theory by saying that migration is not only an individual decision, and rightly so, family members are involved in making migration decisions. Okay, let's look at another theory that attempts to explain the initiation of migration. So, unlike the previous two theories we just looked at, the neoclassical economics theory and the new economics theory of migration, they focus on problems in, we can say problems. We can consider them problems in the countries of origin. They focus more on the supply side. But the dual labor market theory focus on the destination areas. This theory focus on the pull factors that attract people to migrate to these destination areas. They are more demand-based. And according to this dual labor market theory, there's a permanent demand for foreign labor due to four reasons. Changes in the demographic of labor supply. And decades ago, women, they tend to have a part-time job when they are raising kids. But a few decades goes by, women are more and more educated, and they are increasingly more inclined to have careers. So, women's job, in other words, have become more and more prominent with their increase in education, followed by occupational attainment. And because of that, women are less likely to serve as temporary sources of labor. And decades ago, teenagers, they have different part-time jobs in different shops, businesses, including fast food chains and so on, in different retail stores. But as time goes by, teenagers are beginning to be more and more involved in their school, in their formal curriculum, and in their extracurricular activities. Because of that, teenagers may have less time to be involved in part-time jobs. But there's still a need in all these less prominent jobs in retail, in the fast food chain, in other places. And because of that, there's a permanent demand for migrant labor. And a second factor that contributes to the permanent demand of labor would be structural inflation. People often see wages as a status symbol. And because of that, the wages can differ across the occupational prestige or the different job rankings or the different levels of jobs. We always see a difference in wages across levels of jobs. And because of that, people at the lowest level of the job, sometimes they may be less motivated because they get paid the least and their jobs are the least prestigious, and it doesn't solve the problem by increasing the wage at the lowest level to be on par with the wages at other levels. So if we do that, it's going to cause structural inflation and it doesn't work. If we increase the wages at the lowest level, employees at the other levels are going to press for wage increases as well. This is what we mean by structural inflation. And if we do that, if we increase the wages for all job levels under pressure, wage cease to be a status symbol at the lowest level. Things haven't changed. And employees at the lowest level, they are less motivated because their jobs are the less prestigious, so it doesn't serve a purpose. And because of that, maybe the natives, the locals, tend to have more options and more opportunities. They may move up to the other levels. Maybe they have the legality to work, the proper documentation to work. Or maybe they can go for more training, more education to move up. In general, the natives or the locals have more options than the foreign laborers. And this is how structural inflation and motivational problems in the destination areas create a permanent demand for foreign laborers. Sometimes for immigrants, especially for new immigrants or recent immigrants, their reference point are always their countries of origin, especially if they have yet been naturalized. So they may perceive even taking low-level jobs are still better off than what they were doing in their home countries. They may still be making more, taking low-level jobs when compared to what they were doing in their countries of origin. This is how structural inflation and motivational problems create a permanent demand for foreign laborers. So, as you can see, this has something to do with the industry structures of the modern economies in the destination areas, because almost all jobs in all entities have different levels, and wage is always a status symbol attached to a given job. And there's always an economic dualism in most of the destination areas. Just imagine Omaha. There are professionals, all kinds of professionals working in the downtown city, in the city area of Omaha, in the banking and finance area as engineers, as other technical experts, as MDs, as professors at the universities. And companies often treat these highly skilled, knowledgeable, highly educated workforce as their capital, as their fixed labor, because they invest somewhat on these employees to ease them into their organizations, giving them different training programs to help them assimilate and acculturate, to help them better collaborate with other colleagues. So employers often treat these highly skilled, highly educated employees as the fixed labor, essentially like capital. And they are also another aspect of the labor force. They are more variable. These individuals tend to be less skilled, easily replaceable, less educated. So there's also a variable component of this labor force. And if business is good, sometimes employers may need additional labor, and they may hire these laborers on an hourly rate or as contract laborers. So these laborers tend to be more variable. And in a general sense, in many destination countries, in the US, in Canada, in Australia, New Zealand, in the more developed East Asian countries like Taiwan, Japan, or South Korea, usually the locals and some of the highly educated, highly skilled immigrants are considered fixed labor by employers. And the less skilled, less educated locals and immigrants are considered the variable labor. They can be let go easily when times are bad. And employers can easily not renew their contracts. This is what we mean by variable labor force. And in any destination area, sometimes a local, a native person can transition from the variable labor force to the fixed labor force through more education, through more training. It's easier for them compared to immigrants to get more education and more training. And because of that, this creates a permanent demand for foreign laborers. Sometimes they can fulfill the role of variable labor force. And too bad, so sad. their job has less permanency. They can be easily let go, and it's quite easy for employers to not renew their contracts and send them home when their contract expires. So as you can see, the industry structure of these different destination areas create a permanent demand for foreign labor, especially for them to fulfill the roles of variable or temporary labor. And the primary sector of labor correspond to the fixed labor, which are akin to capital. Because employers invest quite a bit in this fixed labor to train them, to hone them, to prepare them to work in different organizations. And the variable labor is akin to the secondary sectors of labor. They have less permanency. Okay, the world system theory views migration as resulting from the process of globalization and market penetration that causes disruption and dislocation on the natives. Capitalists or foreign investors, they tend to come from first world or more developed countries. They have more capital and resources. And because of that, they are more able to consolidate lands to maximize profits, or they are more able to mechanize agriculture to increase revenues. And sometimes to maximize profits and revenues, these foreign investors also replace the subsistence with cash crops to generate more profits. They try to implement cash crops, and they are more likely and more able to invest in modern inputs like fertilizers, modern seeds, and so on. Different kinds of soil to increase profits. But the local farmers, local fishermen, just the local people tend to have less resources compared to these foreign investors. So they are going to be displaced because of land consolidation, mechanization of agriculture, the replacement of subsistence with cash crops, and the use of modern inputs. Many local farmers or local fishermen cannot afford to do these things. And sometimes the foreign investors, they replace the traditional systems of reciprocity in the farming, fishing, and other industries with paid labor. This, over time, can change the mindset of the locals in that area. They can eventually become more individualistic, and they can, over time, put more and more emphasis on private gains because of paid labor and other social change, like the building of transportation systems, improving existing communication systems, the building of schools, and so on, can also take place in the country of origin. And to maximize profits, to minimize costs, sometimes these foreign investors, they hire women to work in their factories, businesses, and other enterprises. They figure women, especially women from patriarchal societies, they may not be the sole breadwinners of their family, That's the foreign investors' assumption. They may not be right, as we know. And because of that, women are more likely to be hired at lower wages. Men who cannot afford land consolidation, who cannot afford to mechanize their agriculture, and men who cannot afford to invest in modern inputs, they are going to be displaced. If they are being displaced, they have no jobs because women are hired in the factories in other places. These men are going to migrate to other countries to try their luck, to look for jobs in these places. And sometimes women working in these factories, they are usually not paid well. And because of that, some women may perceive that wages may be higher in other countries, in other potential destination areas. They too will be more inclined to migrate to other countries to seek for better opportunities. And when foreign investors come, they try to improve upon or build more roads, railroads. They try to improve on the existing transportation and communication links to better transport their products so that it will not go back. The products will be shipped to other places in due time. And because of the improvement in transportation and communication systems, it makes it easier not only for foreign investors to come to different places to invest, but people from these areas can also travel to other destination areas if facilitate a cultural and ideological links. People, because of improvement in transportation and communication systems, people learn about other cultures, other values system, and people learn about new ideologies, people on both ends. And oftentimes, with foreign investment, it also leads to the emergence of global cities like New York, Miami, Chicago, LA, London, Paris, Frankfurt, and so on. And because of improvement in transportation and communication systems, oftentimes the top guns of the factories or other businesses or other companies manage their enterprises through these global cities. And we also see that there are a lot of migrant laborers in these global cities because of the transportation and communication links. And sometimes these foreign investors, when they try to blend in to the local cultures, they are going to introduce certain aspects of their own culture, own ideologies to the locals. And because of that, this makes it easier for the locals also to migrate to other countries, especially if they are being displaced by the foreign investors. So because of that, we also see a lot of foreign laborers in these global cities. Am I right? Okay. There are three theories that focuses on the perpetuation of migration. The first one would be the network theory. Network would be the people we know in different locations or in the same location. In this network theory, it focuses on the people potential migrants know in the destination areas. Because there are earlier batches of migrants who move to the destination areas, and sometimes they remain there. So they know which employers are hiring. They know how to look for housing, or they know how to get paperwork done. And maybe they know how to get healthcare for migrants, who knows? They have a lot of knowledge and information. The earlier migrants from the same location, they are quite familiar with the destination areas. They live there for a while. And if the potential migrants know some of these earlier migrants, maybe they already have their jobs lined up, or they know how to get jobs, regardless of whether they are legal or not. And they know what's the most cost-effective or safer way to travel to that destination area. This is going to reduce the cost and risk associated with the process of migration. This is what we mean by the network theory. They know where to look for housing. They know how to get jobs through these earlier migrants. Maybe some of these earlier migrants can host some of these prospective migrants because they are either family members or friends. This is what we mean by the network theory. And the institutional theory focuses on the role of for-profit and private organizations in perpetuating the migration flow. And some of these organizations focus on something illegal or outrageous, like human trafficking or smuggling of labor. And some of these organizations, they serve as intermediaries between employers in the destination areas and prospective migrants. They offer contracting labor services. And one example would be like the Indonesian, Cambodians, or Vietnamese maids working in Malaysia and Singapore. They go through this, we call that agencies, that serve as middle persons between the prospective migrants and employers in the destination areas. People who, for any reason, they require the services of maids, they go through these agencies in Malaysia or Singapore, and these agencies has a way to contact prospective migrants who are inclined to serve as maids in these destination countries. And sometimes these agencies, which are often private and for-profit, also focus on producing counterfeit documents for prospective migrants. They charge the migrants a fee to produce fake documents. And sometimes these for-profit and private agencies also provide temporary credit to prospective migrants. They pay for their airfare. They pay for any training they have to ease them in to their jobs in the destination area. And these are eventually deducted from their paychecks. And sometimes these for-profit and private organizations also try to arrange the marriage of migrants with people in the destination areas. And these we often find in places that are experiencing an imbalance in sex ratio. Maybe there are too many men compared to women, and some of the men cannot find a wife. And they don't mind marrying somebody outside their race or country. And these can be arranged through different agencies. And these can also be found in places that is highly patriarchal, like Taiwan. With the increase in females' educational attainment, many women in Taiwan have professional jobs. And sometimes men are not inclined to marry women that are more educated or more successful in terms of career than themselves. And because of that, they may marry somebody from Vietnam, Cambodia, or other countries in Southeast Asia. And they may contact certain agencies for these purposes. And there's also other humanitarian agencies that serve as liaison between prospective migrants and people in the destination areas by providing counseling, different kinds of social services, temporary shelters, and other legal advice. So this is the main tenets of the institutional theory. And the last theory that pertains to the perpetuation of migration would be the cumulative causation theory. According to this theory, each migration flow is going to alter the social context and the environment of the places of origin. People who migrated to other places, in most instances, their income increased. And if they come back, either permanently or for vacations, people may see that these migrants are better off. And they may sense that incomes in other places may be higher than income in their places of origin. This is what we mean by relative income. People in these places of origin begin to compare their income with the incomes migrants are bringing back. And they may be somewhat envious, or they may have a sense of deprivation. They may feel that they are not doing as well compared to those who migrate abroad as foreign laborers. And these may increase their desires to migrate when they see that their neighbors, their family members, their friends, when they went abroad to work, they are doing quite well. And some of these returning migrants, they purchase land, and they may not use this land for agriculture or food production. Some of these migrants may use the land to build houses or mansions, or they may let the land be vacant. Maybe they may use it when they decide to move back permanently in years to come. So, if land purchased by returning migrants are not used for agriculture or farming, it means that these returning migrants are not going to employ any labor, are not going to create any employment opportunities. And this is the same if the land is being lying vacant. And sometimes these returning migrants, they purchase a piece of land as a symbol of prestige. Regardless, these returning migrants are not creating any jobs for the locals. And because of that, some of the locals may be inclined to migrate in search of job opportunities abroad. And Some of these migrants, they purchase land and at the same time, they mechanize the agriculture and food production, meaning that they are not going to employ so many locals to work on their lands. This can also increase people's propensity to migrate, because these returning migrants are not creating any jobs. And sooner or later, a culture of migration is going to surface in that places of origin. People seeing that returning migrants are doing well, making more money, they feel deprived. And when they see that these returning migrants are not hiring anybody to work on their lands and their farms, they may sense that they are better off migrating to other places. And sometimes we see in many places, usually those in their late teens and young adulthood are more likely to migrate. The infants, the young children, and the elderly are left behind. This is what we mean by the depletion of labor in the places of origin. These can definitely stagnate economic growth. So when economic growth are being stagnant, there's no job creation. And because of that, it creates a culture of migration. People sense that they got to migrate to other places to look for work, because they cannot find jobs in their places of origin. And in the destination area, related to the dual labor market theory, if there's a permanent demand for more temporary sources of labor in the secondary sector, sooner or later, some of these jobs in the secondary sector are going to be considered immigrant jobs. And because of this quote-unquote stigma attached to these jobs in the secondary sectors, some natives may shun away from these jobs because they are less prestigious. And because of the improvement in transportation and communication links, maybe people or prospective migrants in the countries of origin may know, either through their friends or through the news or through other avenues, that some of these jobs people shun away in the destination areas. They may know that there's always a permanent demand for these jobs in the destination areas. And because of that, they may be more inclined to migrate, especially if most of the young people in their countries of origin have moved abroad and their economies are stagnant. This will make them more inclined to migrate as well.